Hey, so with all this Big Ten dominance, when does Nebraska get in on the party?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. Today's mailbag episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players were driven by the details. Highlights make the reel, but the work behind them makes it count. Stay tuned for this week's Moving the Game Forward. The all-new Mazda CX-5, more to move every side of you.
All right, welcome in. It is Friday. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is here with me. You have found us on a mailbag day. We are going to go through your questions. Thank you, as always, for delivering those to us. I'm going to have to check the Discord channel to make sure that there's nothing in there that I can put to the top of the list. We will get to that. If you put something on Discord, we're going to add it in the middle of the mailbag. Yeah, you can check, but I'll start. I'll start with Caitlin. Caitlin comes to us from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Whoa.
I'm a new listener to the podcast and first-time contributor to the mailbag. That's awesome, by the way. With
Great.
The Big Ten teams dominating championships this year, do you think there are any Big Ten teams that have a good shot at taking baseball and softball? Dare I dream that Nebraska can win a championship this year? I attended one of the softball games of the series when Nebraska lost to Tennessee to end their season last year. I would love to be able to see them come back and win it all. I really enjoy your podcast and look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Yeah,
Big
I do.
Ten, Big Ten national championships coming up in May and June.
Hey, you got a couple options. So baseball, UCLA is the favorite to win the championship right now. People forget that UCLA is in the Big Ten. They're the best team in the nation. They have been for pretty much all year. They went to the College World Series last year. They've same team basically coming back, and they have the best player in the country. So yes, on that front, Nebraska in baseball has put themselves in position to potentially be in the mix for that. You make the Final Eight, you make the College World Series, and you're in that championship format. Softball, Nebraska could be the Big Ten's best option for winning a national championship, at least how it stands right now. So yes and yes, I would be my answers.
Multiple options. I mean, the SEC is going to be the favorite. The SEC is going to send the favorite to Oklahoma City in softball. I don't think there's any doubt. Well, you do have Texas Tech from the Big 12 with like their version of Jordy Ball down in Lubbock and Nigeri Kennedy, and the Red Raiders were in the finals a year ago against Texas. So Texas Tech, multiple teams from the SEC, and then Nebraska. That's kind of the front of the mix right now in college softball. But UCLA and Washington, which is still unbeaten going into this weekend in the Big Ten. Nebraska has one loss. UCLA has the two losses against Nebraska. They've just beat each other, and that's it. So those three teams are absolutely going to be in the mix to be at home in the postseason, and that's how you get to – it's just your best opportunity to get to the Women's College World Series. And, yeah, in baseball, you're right. I mean, UCLA is far and away the best shot for the Big Ten to win a national championship in baseball, and it would be – it's been a long time. Michigan played for a title a few years ago, but
2019.
Yeah. Well, we can look up at some point. We'll talk about this in a mailbag or a podcast this year. The last time the Big Ten won a national championship in baseball, it's been many decades. So probably the best shot that the league has had in a long time is coming up here in June because of the Bruins and Rock Chalowski, as you mentioned.
Yeah, so there's positives and negatives. I mean, like UCLA is almost certainly going to be like the number one overall seed, number one national seed in baseball when it comes to tournament time. Now, we've seen number one overall seeds miss the College World Series before, and so it doesn't.
And very few of them win at all.
It's a tournament, it's a tournament, and so the good side of that is if Nebraska's in baseball, a top 16 seed or a 2 somewhere in a regional, you're still going to put yourself in a really good position to be able to advance through and then advance to a super, and then it's a 3-game series, and then you're in the College World Series. So like it's a tournament after all.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Caitlin, for the question. We go to Adam in Wichita. Is the brilliance and excellence of what Curt Cignetti did in 2 seasons or has done in 2 seasons being under-celebrated and somewhat wasted with him being at Indiana? When Bob Stoops did something similar at Oklahoma 25 years ago, it seemed like a much bigger deal. And if Matt Rhule's teams had done anything close in 2 seasons at Nebraska, we'd already have a gold statue of him on the island of the cold plunge pool. And he'd be talking daily about his leadership processes and program strategy on all of the outlets that he could.
That's funny. I think there's a lot of what Cignetti has done in Indiana that's amplified because he's at Indiana, right? It's been historically difficult to win there. They're in a very, very challenging conference. And so it's amplified nationally that way. I sort of see what Adam's kind of getting at there. Just because it's Indiana after all, and that'll get talked about. Also, there's some of what he's done that, unfortunately, I think, and probably unfairly to a certain extent, gets chalked up to, hey, this is a new era in college football and college athletics, and you could spend money to win championships and blah, 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 blah. Like, it doesn't near give him the credit he deserves for what he's done with that program in 2 years. So there's a little bit of both there, but that's the way I see it.
That's a great point, because I do think there's a lot of the establishment in college football that believes that Cignetti is just the first person who mastered the new way to do it, and that's why he's won. And if maybe it had been the old, it might be the case, but it doesn't do justice to like the level of accomplishment.
Right.
It's if you say that, fine, but it can't be at the expense of suggesting if it was the old way and there wasn't a new path that he wouldn't have been good then. Like, that the only reason he's made this work is because there was a new formula and he figured it out before anybody else. Like, that is not acceptable. I don't believe. Like, he's a great coach and he should get all the credit that he gets, and probably more, for what he's done in 2 seasons to take Indiana from doormat in the Big Ten to the best team in the country.
People are a little bit scared to say this type of thing, but I mean, I don't see any way that this isn't the case. He is the best coach in college football, bar none. The job he's done in 2 years has been unbelievable, and he's the best coach in college football. I believe that he could go a lot of places and win right away. There's some of what he's done at Indiana that made the transition I guess a little bit easier, but there's some of what he's done at Indiana has obviously made it difficult because of what Indiana has been historically. So he's the best coach in college football, and that, is a great place to start. Nebraska doesn't have that, and everybody else in the country doesn't have that right now.
And if you're right, I mean, Adam's right on to some level. If Matt Rhule had done this at Nebraska, it would be a bigger deal in Nebraska than even it is in Indiana, what Cignetti has done. But that's just the nature of the two states. So the whole state of Nebraska would have completely lost its mind if Matt Rhule or any coach had come in and turned the Nebraska program around to win a national championship in year 2, beyond probably what would happen in just about any state in the country. That's how crazy the level of craziness that Nebraska would have taken it to. What's interesting is when I was sitting there talking a minute ago about Cignetti and how he mastered this formula, so did Dusty May. And I think if somebody's not getting credit, like we love to hate Dusty May, and I know you don't like Michigan, but people love to hate him. Like, bought his team. It's Michigan. They was born at third base, all of this stuff. Like, he's also in year 2. He also inherited a team, not a bad program, like Indiana football, a good program, but a team that wasn't good when he came in there, and did the whole thing basically through the transfer portal. So, like, it's not just a one-off. Cignetti has shown it, and then Dusty May, I think, in basketball has validated that this is a viable path to a fast turnaround that can get you all the way to the top.
Yeah, and And yeah, so this is a good transition into this next question here from Brendan. He says, "Is there anyone in the portal for basketball you'd love to see wearing Husker red? Imagining they would fit in the system and the team. Also, imagine that the price is not a concern for who is your one pick from the portal." Okay, so imagining this world where you just go out and you get all the best players, and so that is kind of what I was going to go into on our previous question. Like, Michigan has really good players. Don't get me wrong. They don't have the 5 best players in the country, right? It's just there's so much in basketball where,
but very good players.
They have very good players. They have probably the player of the year in Yaxel Endenborg, who is a hell of a story. Who came from like the junior college ranks and played at UAB, and but it's not like they're just signed mercenaries, and they found really good fits for what they do. Feels like Michigan always has a point guard who just really gets on your nerves, and Cadeau was that guy this year, and he was very questionable in his time at North Carolina, and then all of a sudden was the best player in the separator in the national championship game 2 years later.
They didn't recreate the Fab Five. If they would have had Cameron Boozer and AJ Devanza and Darren Peterson and like put that team together, like the 2026 version of the Fab Five, they probably also would have won the national championship. But that's not what Michigan did. Michigan did the diametrical opposite of that.
Yeah, they found fits for what they do, and then, like I said in the first question, it's a tournament, and you gotta get some things to go. Like, they had to play really well against St. Louis in the round of 32 to be able to get through that, and they were really, really good that day, and St. Louis was really, really good that day. So, fantasy world, I mean, obviously you'd like to see Nebraska get the best, players they possibly can, but that's the best coaches don't necessarily look at that. They go with what they have, and then you find relationships that you have developed and built, and then get them on campus and see if there fits there, and then you work on your team from there.
I looked up, because Nebraska, at this point, as we record this podcast, Nebraska has not secured any commitments, and I've not seen any solidified news about prospects who are visiting Lincoln. I think there probably will be some on campus in the next couple of days. I mean, Friday, today, as you're listening to this, is the first day that players can come in and coaches can go on the road. There are some reports. Robin from Husker Online reported, or he predicted, that Nebraska was in the driver's seat for Sam Orme, a power forward from Belmont. So that's the kind of player that, or maybe you might find one who is a little bit more high profile than that Nebraska is able to get, but it's not going to be the players who are ranked most likely in the top 10 in the portal rankings. Brendan said he would love to get John Blackwell from Wisconsin, and so would a lot of teams that are perennial Sweet 16 and Final Four contenders, and one of those teams is probably going to get him and all of the players who have a similar rating to him. And that doesn't mean that Nebraska lost the portal. It means Fred Hoiberg is out doing what Fred Hoiberg does. And just because he has more money doesn't mean that he's all that much better positioned to fill out his roster, because everyone's money is going up.
Yep. All right, let's take a break. More questions from you all coming up next on the Locked On Nebraska podcast.
All right, we got a message right now from Mazda. It is this week moving the game forward segment for those who show there's more to the score than what's on screen. And we are going to turn our attention to the Nebraska baseball team right as the Huskers hit the road for a big conference series against Oregon. Our spotlight shines on Nebraska center fielder and leadoff hitter Mac Moyer. He is hitting .406. That's a team high in 33 games this season, son of former Major League pitcher Jamie Moyer. Mac started his career at Oregon, interestingly enough, where Nebraska's headed, as I said, for a series that begins today in Eugene. Mac Moyer reminds us of what it takes to raise the bar. He's doing it with his play this year on the diamond. He dials in every detail. He gives it that extra fire, that grit, and I never quit kind of attitude. We put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
And a word from TurboTax. Yes, it is tax season. For a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes is a lot. So you can try to book an appointment that's not the most convenient. You sit in a waiting room with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth, wondering if they really get your situation. But this year, you could get a major upgrade. Intuit TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app right on the spot. And then just like that, poof, you're done. Your TurboTax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get the real-time notifications as you go on about your day. It's the relief of walking in, meeting a real person, talking out, knowing your taxes, and they are being handled right every single time. So here's what you need to do to start the process. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and book your appointment today. All right, welcome back. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen and for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Join the Everydayer Club. I did check the Discord. We get some questions in there. We could use a few, so send them in. I don't see anything for this week. So join the club now. Find the link in the description of the episode of this podcast. Join on and get ad-free episodes here of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. We are on to more of your questions where we head to C-Nels on YouTube from this week, talking about Berke Buketengel. He says he wouldn't have started on any other Big Ten team that made the tournament. Tells you everything you need to know.
This is kind of the part where we just like to pull things out of the YouTube comments that weren't necessarily intended for the mailbag. So beware, if you make a comment in the YouTube area, you could get selected unknowingly to appear in the mailbag. And we chose to do that with C-Nels here. I don't believe that is accurate. I think that there are Big Ten teams that made the tournament this year that Berke would, other than Nebraska, that Berke would have started on. Like if you want to look at his points per game, you might be able to make that assumption, but his defensive presence, being 6'10", not needing to score and being able to help the team in other ways, that's a value that. Yeah. Would he start on every team? Would he have started on Michigan? Would he have started on Illinois? I can't tell you that. I would say probably not, but he would have been a valuable piece off the bench for those teams. And I do think there are teams that he would have found a role in the top 5. So,
I agree. He's a valuable player at Nebraska. Like, don't try and diminish that since he's not here. That doesn't mean Nebraska can't go out and get a player who is of equal value to him in the transfer portal or more value, in the transfer portal. They can, and they'll attempt to. But yeah, I don't want to diminish what he did this season. He was a huge piece to what they were doing. And yeah, I'm not the kind of guy who's going to look at it as like all right, this guy was averaging 6.5 points a game, so the guy averaging 9.5 points a game was better. Right? That's not how it works in basketball. You got to fit to your style, and Nebraska needed him as an anchor defensively, especially what they were considering giving up defensively at the 5 position, with the guys that they had been playing there throughout the season, like Rick Mass. So really important piece to what they're doing. However they set it up next year, it's never going to be a 1-for-1. You just build your roster and then you figure out what you need to accentuate and work through once you get to that point.
All right, we go to Rich Eat Beef on YouTube. Yeah. Good name. Talking about Nebraska football here. He says, we have 0 wins in 30 games against ranked teams. Have not had a winning record in conference play in how many years? It's since 2016. That's the answer. All that equates to apathy. So there was a spirited discussion in the comment section after our show where we discussed the reasons for apathy, and we were asking the question basically of each other, how much does the schedule in 2026 have to do with that? Is it that fans are fearful of what's going to happen to Nebraska when they look at the schedule? And got some pushback on that. Quite a few people suggested that no, that's not the reason that they're apathetic about Nebraska football. And then they went on to list other reasons. Many of them had to do with the fact that Nebraska is just not beating good teams. And that's what Rich Eat Beef is getting at here.
Yeah, and fair. I think that is accurate. You could just look at the win-loss record and say, oh, okay, well, I get that. At the same time, my counter would be, well, it wasn't this apathetic last year, and it wasn't this apathetic 2 years ago, and it's not like things were all that much different as far as the win-loss record was concerned. It's the streak, I guess, has just gone a year longer. So was it something that finally broke you in year 8 and 10 and 8 and 9? It may be. But it's a fair point. Like, it comes down to wins and losses. That's what gets people excited. Wins, and what gets people unexcited is losses. It is pretty simple sometimes.
All right, so Scott and Windsor. And by the way, I want to say thanks to Scott and Vince, who we'll get to later in the show, for continuing to fight through all of the apathy and be regulars for us on Friday. I don't think Scott has missed a Friday with the mailbag, and that's much appreciated. And Vince only missed last week because of a technical issue, so he's back, and we'll get to him in a minute. Scott says, Mitch, you seemed a little peeved by all the negativity during last Friday's mailbag episode. Your words said you weren't, but your face suggested otherwise. My own negativity may have contributed to it. I apologize. Please keep the great content going. I don't know. I don't know how
question, but
I don't know.
Last Friday was an odd show because I was in Vegas and I was trying to get out of there. and yeah, it was sort of an odd show, so forgive us.
Was that the show where everything kept breaking?
Probably. Yeah. Probably.
There was a lot going on that show. Was it the one where you slept too late? I honestly don't remember. The days ran together. That may have been later. But regardless, I think, as I've said before, like, I don't mind it. I don't mind the negativity. I don't mind being annoyed. In fact, it kind of fuels me. I like to be annoyed. And if I didn't have that in my life, then I think I would have a little bit less joy. So thank you for annoying me. And if some of you out there have things about us that annoy you, we've had some of this in recent mailbags. You can continue this trend. Feel free to tell us what annoys you about us. There's an emailer, or I'm sorry, a YouTube commenter who we do have a question from later on, Mike, who was annoyed about me repeating words in my answers. So I'm going to try to stop doing that also.
Yeah, we love constructive criticism. So speaking on the apathy topic, Michael in Leroy, Michigan writes in. He says, Connor's right about the schedule being the major downer right now for me. Rhule has given me no reason at all to believe he can win a game he's not supposed to win. And there are so many of those on the schedule this year. If Nebraska got to play a Big 12 schedule this year, maybe I'd be more excited.
Okay. Yeah, it wouldn't be I guess for Nebraska, it would be more fun because you'd expect to win more games. I like to see them play the best competition, but that obviously has a limit. Like, I wouldn't want to see them play the AFC West. So, all right, that's somebody who's providing a counterpoint to some of the commentary that we received in that response to the Tuesday pod. So, thank you, Michael.
Yeah. It's always so hard to tell. Nebraska has adapted so much to the Big Ten, and obviously people would say, well, they haven't adapted very well, and that's obviously very fair. But when we do the cross conference stuff, we do it all the time in basketball, right? If UConn was a Big Ten team, what would their Big Ten record have been this year? And people always say, oh, they would have gone 13-8 or 13-9 in the Big Ten. Or
that's a hypothetical.
It's a hypothetical, and it's hypothetical. It's not real. They ended up in the national championship game because, like I've said continually, it's a tournament, and good teams find a way to advance in the tournament.
Somebody was mad about the fact that we brought up a hypothetical, and I think that's in the. Oh yeah, it's coming up. Let's take a break, and we'll come back and we'll get to that. Don't make hypothetical statements after this.
Are we back?
No, we have a word from Indeed, I believe.
We have a word from Indeed. Great. Hiring isn't just about finding someone who's willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who could actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed sponsored jobs is the way to go, because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post, Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your criteria, skills, certifications, location, things like that. If I were hiring, I wouldn't just want a person who could fill the job, a person who could help. I want someone with real experience who could be an asset to my team. It's going to save you time in the long run. It's probably going to save you money as well. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this podcast will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back. Final segment. We got a bunch of questions to get through before the end of the show. I'm going to group two of these together and read these two questions because they're kind of on the same topic or similarly aligned as we finished up this discussion about apathy. So first from Justin, he says, so I'm just looking for a silver lining, and I think I found one that I may cling to. Maybe the team that Nebraska has this year fits the skill set of Matt Rhule. As far as I know, he's never had a 5-star quarterback on his team before Dylan Raiola, or a team with the potential that the Huskers have had in his first 3 seasons. I'm not sure about that. So his story has always been, quote, no one thinks we can beat these guys. We need to outperform better athletes, so we have to work harder and make less mistakes, end quote. And maybe that wasn't the picture he was able to paint in the last couple of years with Dylan and Ja'Cory Barney having very high ceilings. Maybe he isn't as skilled as he is at telling players, quote, you're a physical freak athlete and we should be better than everyone else we meet. I may be misreading this thing. I know my expectations are lower this year than any other year in my life. That didn't include Mike Riley coaching, just trying to come up with a glimmer of hope. All right, we let Justin kind of vent there. I don't know that Matt Rhule is better equipped to be able to coach players who are like low talent or overachievers, and that's not necessarily what he's had. At Temple, yes. At Baylor, I would argue no, recruiting from the state of Texas. And there were players at Temple that he had, who Deion Dawkins and like Reddick, who were outstanding talents who have gone on to be great players in the NFL. And he coached those guys up just fine in spite of them being excellent players. So no, I don't, you're looking for a silver lining there and a glimmer of hope. I mean, maybe he can coach this team to have a chip on its shoulder, and maybe he's good at that, and we'll see. And then talent is worth a lot. But you got to play as a team, and you still have to play complementary and sound football all the way across. It doesn't matter how good of players you have. If you don't have that, then you're not going to win very many games. And then we'll end this conversation with Adam in Colwich, Kansas. Mitch and Connor, on your Tuesday episode, you had some good discussions around Husker football fan apathy. It is impossible not to feel this going into 2026, especially following the hype that we had to start the last 3 seasons. Concerning the reasons for this apathy, instead of next year's schedule difficulty or the poor finish to last year or the relatively low hype roster and staff additions, what are your thoughts about the Husker fans just being smart and trying to be realistic based on what we've experienced in the last decade plus? Unfortunately, doing what's needed on the field to exceed expectations and preseason win projections has not been the identity of Nebraska football in quite some time. Thanks for all you do. And as this basketball season clearly showed, us Husker fans will be here and ready to explode once we get a team that delivers.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. I mean, you have to have a team that people like and they believe in and they think is good. And Nebraska hasn't really had that over the 3 seasons of Rhule so far. I think there is obviously the starting point is the realism, what it's been for a while now. But I think our main pushback, or certainly mine, is that there's not everything needs to be met with so much negativity, overwhelming negativity. You could look at things and say, and it's not fun to do. And it's not a great like conversational starter if you're just sitting there like, yeah, they did some good things. We'll see what happens. But that is a completely fair attitude to have. So I think that's where the apathy sort of starts. But not everything needs to be met with like, oh, they have this guy. It's obviously going to work out in the worst possible way. You know what I mean? And I feel like we've gotten probably a little bit too much of that.
We go to Mike on YouTube. He was kind of on one in the comment section the other day, and he said, I'm sorry, I have to stop here. I guess this was the last straw. You're going to call the ball game against Utah a meaningless day? What has happened to society? There is not a single game on the schedule that is meaningless unless you're playing exhibition games. Every game counts. And I would think that I'm in the majority of people who believe that. Maybe we should ask the question, how many people out there feel like the Utah Bowl game was meaningless? And this was in response to me saying, it was a hypothetical. Would people feel differently this offseason if Nebraska had been beaten in the way that it was by Penn State and Iowa, and then had a good day in Vegas in the bowl game and won that game? And I was the one who said that the bowl game, being a bowl game that was not part of the college football playoff or any great milestone for Nebraska, didn't end a drought, that it was essentially meaningless. And I mean that like in the context of what football games mean. Like it meant much less to me, and I think to most people, than like the Iowa game or the Penn State game or the bowl game the year before that. Of course, it wasn't meaningless. There's only 13 of these things in a year. It means something, but I don't want to eat my own words. Like I said, it was meaningless, so I'll stick to that side of it.
Well, the context is important. I mean, I think even Mike would agree. You know, you get into a bowl game, all bowl games that aren't the college football playoff, you could not excuse it away, but there's always reasons to say, that's okay. Let's move on to next season. And it doesn't pack as much of a punch. If you win it, you should take the momentum, quote unquote, that you get from that and be excited about it. But does it make that much of a difference in the long run? Who is to really say? So, there's the bowl games always come with a different context than everything else. Yeah, I mean,
Nebraska's best player opted out of the game. Utah's several of their top players chose not to play. Utah's coach left the Utes the week before the game. That's what I'm talking about. Like it has kind of an exhibition type of feel, which is why I asked the question in that context. How could that game have actually changed the offseason vibe? And I whatever, we had that conversation. All right, let's go to Jordan. Let's say, hypothetically, buzzword, this season turns out how every Husker fan, or just about every Husker fan that we're talking to here at least, expects it to at this moment in time. How bad is the attendance going to look come November?
Well, how bad do they expect it to be? I mean, I guess I don't know, but
if you're talking like 5, 6, 7 wins, is Nebraska is the Ohio State game, is Memorial Stadium going to be half full? I mean, it is Ohio State that comes to Lincoln for the final game of the regular season, so you have to take that into account too.
We have history to suggest that they're always going to be there. That although it does change and vacillate a little bit based on if you expect your team to compete at all in the game. And so I guess there's a little bit of that, but I've seen a little bit of the conversation going on about, hey, is the sellout streak like in danger this year? My gut says no. I mean, my gut says that that's just going to continue to be there for, they're going to hold on throughout this bad streak.
I think so because I think by the time we get to August and like the last tickets have to be eaten up for Ohio and Bowling Green and North Dakota, that people are going to find reasons to be feeling good. So, all right, from Vince in Napa, we got 3 questions left. Happy Friday once again from the land of great fermented grape juice. There's been much discussion about the importance of Nebraska's performance in the trenches, which holds the key to any semblance of improvement in 2026. The 25 offensive line was a turnstile in pass protection, and its run blocking was more reflective of Emmett Johnson's skill. Defensive line, don't get me started. Due to work obligations, I did not watch 1 second of the Las Vegas Bowl. But in the last 3 games, Nebraska linemen looked like mannequins. Based on portal acquisitions and coaching changes, which side of the line are the Huskers more equipped to make improvements, O-line or D-line?
Well, a bigger improvement, I think probably the D-line, because I just think you're starting from a lower place.
Okay.
But like a better unit, I would say the offensive line.
Yeah, I think they're more equipped to make big improvements on the offensive line. I understand what you're saying. But I think I'm just taking a simple approach to it. If I line up the offensive line from the end of last season, and then I take them and I look at the offensive line right now, how big of a jump is there between those two groups? It could be significant. And I do the same thing on the defensive side, and I'm not quite as sure. In fact, I don't believe there is the potential to take as big of a jump. So that's just where I'm at right now in April. All right, from Terry in Norfolk, as we wind down, with Nebraska playing an exhibition volleyball match this weekend at the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls, why not go to the larger venue in town? The Pentagon seats 3,200 and the Sanford Premier Center can hold 12,000. Yes, Nebraska volleyball's headed up to South Dakota, home of Bergen Riley, to take on Iowa State on Saturday night or Saturday at some point.
Because it's more fun to pack a small building than it is to, try.
Yeah, we saw this with basketball.
Yeah, it is. It just is more fun that way, and that's what you're going to demand for a spring match.
They said that for when Nebraska's played basketball the last couple of years, that place gets about as loud as anywhere. And, it's just the acoustics and the environment. Also, there is a rodeo in town, I checked, that has occupied the Sanford Premier Center this weekend. I don't know that if the rodeo was somewhere else, if Nebraska and Iowa State would have taken their match anywhere other than the Pentagon. That seems to be like the it kind of venue. And it's why there have been basketball games there every year in November, and it will continue to be. And now Nebraska volleyball is getting a piece of that. They're going to be back in South Dakota in September to play in Brookings against SDSU. I think I have that right. And then Nebraska volleyball also will be playing at Sokol Arena in a couple of weeks against Creighton on the Creighton campus. So a smaller arena, not at the CHI Health Center. And also playing out in Western Nebraska is that they're playing in Chadron. I think they're playing in Chadron against Northern Colorado. Wow. Yep. Pulled that out of thin air.
Yeah. Here is Matt in Elkhorn. Final question. What are your thoughts on this year's Frozen Four? A lot of people are disappointed because it's all college hockey blue bloods, but I think we ended up with the best teams. Should be a great weekend of hockey. I'm taking North Dakota. All right, Matt.
We're out of our depth here. I had to look it up. The semifinals are over when you hear this podcast come out. They were played on Thursday night, but we don't know the winners yet because we're recording this in the afternoon. So Denver, Michigan, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. It's in Las Vegas, by the way.
That's the one thing I know about it, because when I was leaving Vegas, they were setting up. They were in the same building, and so they were setting up for the hockey Frozen Four afterwards. Cool.
Okay. I'll go with Matt. I'll take no. Big Ten. Big Ten wins everything. So Badgers. How about that? We'll go with the Badgers. I'm not sure who they're playing in the semis, but I'm going with the Badgers.
Let's do it. Badgers or Wolverines, I suppose, as well as an option there.
Yeah, and then we can have a conversation nationally. The talking heads can go, look, the Big Ten even won hockey. They can't lose.
They can't stop the Big Ten. All right, thanks for your questions today. Appreciate them as always, and get them in for next week. We'll start stacking them up. Thanks for listening to Locked On Nebraska. Join us next week. Of course, join the Everydayer Club as well and get ad-free episodes to this show. If you're watching on video, we'll send you over to the first ever national 24/7 Locked On YouTube channel. Also, make your second listen on audio Locked On College Football. Talk to you next week.